notes are about performing operations with decimals. So our essential question is, how do I solve problems with decimals? The good news is the process to solving problems with decimals is very, very similar to whole numbers. The bad news is the place value is a little trickier. Okay? When you add or subtract decimals, you have to line up the place values. So, to begin with, we talked in the last lesson about how the number that's immediately to the left of the decimal point is the ones place. So in this case, the 9 is in the ones place. And that's the most important one to identify. If you can find the ones place, you're in good shape. Now, let's go to the left and identify our tens, our hundreds, and our thousands. Those are all place values we talked about in the last lesson on whole numbers. If you want to review place value a little bit, but you don't want to watch the whole numbers lesson, that's fine. The place value review is right at the very beginning. So you can watch the first couple minutes and get a review. Now, as we notice that we use the decimal point here, okay, and in many countries they use a comma instead, so we need you to switch your thinking if that's the case. To the right of the decimal point, we're going to mirror. So we have the tenths. And I'm emphasizing the THS on the end there. Tenths versus tens. So we've got this kind of mirror effect going on. Okay, then we have the hundredths. Again, kind of mirroring. Then we have the thousands. Notice the TH on the end, mirror image, kind of creating a rainbow. If we had gone to the 10,000ths place, this 5 would be the 10,000ths. But we didn't do that. It would be the next place values. We were doing the whole numbers. So around the ones place value, we have what we call symmetry in mathematics. We often call it being a mirror in everyday life. All right, so this whole section of notes is how do I add and subtract decimals. Let's take a look at our first problem here. It is critical that we line up the decimal point when we're adding and subtracting numbers with decimals in them. So I am most interested in these decimal points right here. 23.09. Now my next number has to have the decimal point right underneath. And I need to line up my columns. So the 6 will go underneath the 3, the 7 underneath the 0, and the 8 underneath the 9. This is an addition problem. And now I'm going to add very much the way I did whole numbers. I'm going to start on the right. 9 plus 8 is 17. 1 plus 0 is 1, plus 7 is 8. Decimal points, all in a row. That is key to solving these problems correctly. 3 plus 6 is 9, and 2 plus nothing is 2. So 29 and 87 hundredths is the correct way to read that. What we usually say is 29.87, but that's considered a slang way of reading the number. Let's look at the next one. Here are my key decimal points. So 4 and 733 thousandths, decimal point. So that means the 9 goes under the 4, and the 1's out here by itself. The 8 is underneath the 7. And this takes us to, I'll remember, sometimes we have to put in zeros to hold some place values. I need a 0 and another 0 to hold those places. It's okay if you want to put a 0 here, but it's not necessary. Again, we're adding. 3 plus 0 is 3. 3 plus 0 is 3. 7 plus 8 is 15. Carry the 1. Make sure those decimal points are all in a beautiful line. 1 plus 4 is 5. Plus 9 is 14. Carry the 1. And 1 plus 1 is 2. So 24 and 533 thousandths is the correct mathematical way to say that. 24.533 is the everyday way to say it. Oh, goody, a subtraction problem. Paying careful attention to those decimal points. All right, so 567 and 1200ths. Decimal. The 4, then the 3. The 7, the 8, and the 5. Now, this is another example of where I'm going to need a place holding 0, right there. Because, and this one's particularly important, this is 0 minus 5, which means I have to do some borrowing or regrouping. So I will borrow from the tens place and add it to the ones. 10 minus 5 is 5. 1 minus 8, I'm going to have to regroup. 11 minus 8 is 3. 0 minus 7, I'm regrouping again. 10 minus 7 is 3. Make sure those decimal points are lining up beautifully. 6 minus 4 is 2. 6 minus 3 is 3. And 5 minus nothing is 5. I want to take just a minute to point out to you that these are very, very different situations. 5 minus nothing and nothing minus 5. Completely different situations. In this case, we ended up with both answers being a 5, but we had to borrow in the ones place, right? We can't take 5 away from nothing. If you don't have any money, you can't go and spend $5. But you can take nothing away from 5. I can have $5 and not spend it. Okay, so very different situations, and be careful about those. Our last subtraction problem. Oh, where's the decimal point? 56. 56 is a whole number, so the decimal point comes after the 6. Don't let people fool you. 109 and 12/100ths. 6, 5. I'm going to need a couple of placeholding zeros. All right, 2 minus 0 is 2, and 1 minus 0 is 1. Lining up my decimal points. 9 minus 6 is 3. 0 minus 5. I have to borrow. 10 minus 5 is 5, and nothing minus nothing is nothing. So 53 and 1200ths. Again, making the point, 0 minus 5 and 2 minus 0, completely different ideas. Right? I can have $2 and take nothing away from what I have, and I still have $2. But if I have no money and I try to spend or buy something that costs $5, I'm either borrowing from a friend, whoever's off to my left mathematically, right? Or I can't do it. Now at this point in the notes, you can pause the notes and do the addition and subtraction practice, or you can keep going with the notes. That's up to you. The next section on our notes is multiplication of decimals. So how do I multiply decimals? Okay, to multiply decimals, you line up the last digits. The place value of these digits don't matter yet. Very different than whole numbers, because with whole numbers it was all about the place value. Now we just want to put them so that the last digits underneath each other. So last digit would be the 7 and the 8 here. 43.7, 6.8. Multiply. Okay, at this point I'm going to multiply just like I did whole numbers. 8 times 7 is 56. Carry the 5. 8 times 3 is 24. Plus 5 is 29. Carry the 2. 8 times 4 is 32. Plus 2 is 34. Now I need a placeholding 0 before I go on with multiplying by 6. 6 times 7 is 42. Carry the 4. 6 times 3 is 18. Plus 4 is 22. Carry the 2. 6 times 4 is 24. Plus 2 is 26. Now I have to add my columns. 6 plus 0 is 6. 9 plus 2 is 11. 1 plus 4 is 5. Plus 2 is 7. 3 plus 6 is 9. And 2 plus nothing is 2. Now here is where decimals are different than whole numbers. I have to count the place values after 0. I've got 1, 2. I'm counting the place values after the decimal point. So 2 place values after the decimal point. So I start here on the end, and I'm going to come in 1, 2 place values and put my decimal. So my answer is 297 and 16/100ths, or 297.16. Let's look at another problem like this. 234 and 62/100ths. Okay, again, I'm lining up those last digits. I don't care about the place values here. I love multiplying by 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 2 is 1. Love it. I'm going to need a placeholding 0 before I move on to multiplying by the 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 4 is 16. Plus 2 is 18. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 1 is 13. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 1 is 9. Add these up. 2 plus 0 is 2. 6 plus 8 is 14. 1 plus 4 is 5. Plus 4 is 9. 3 plus 8 is 11. 1 plus 2 is 3. Plus 3 is 6. And nothing plus 9 is 9. Now, I have got to, let's see, I've got 1, 2 places, 3 places after the decimal point. So I'm going to start on the end and come in 1, 2, 3. So 961 and 942 thousandths is my answer. One more multiplication problem. All righty. Let's see. 8.03 and then 349.2. Okay, it doesn't matter which one goes on the top or the bottom here, as long as I'm lining up those last digits when I do it. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 0 0 is 0. 3 times 8 is 24. I'm done with the ones place, which means I need a place holding 0. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. 4 times 8 is 32. Now I'm going to need 2 place holding zeros. 9 times 3 is 27. 9 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. 9 times 8 is 72. Now I'm going to need 3 place holding zeros. So our last one we've got to multiply here. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 0 is 0. And 2 times 8 is 16. I need to add these up. 9 plus 0 is 9. 2 plus 0 is 2. 4 plus 1 is 5. Plus 7 is 12. Carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. Plus 2 is 5. Plus 2 is 7. Plus 6 is 13. 1 plus 3 is 4. Plus 2 is 6. 6 plus 7 is 13. And 1 plus 1 is 2. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places after the decimal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 23.6329 as our final answer. You have a choice here in the notes. You can pause and do the multiplication practice, or you can finish up by doing the division of decimals. So our last section in this set of notes is how do I divide decimals? When we divide decimals, the divisor has to be a whole number. If the divisor, which is on the outside of the house, is a decimal, then you have to move the decimal point to the right of the number. If you do that, you also have to move the decimal point in the dividend, which is the inside number, the same number of place values. Sometimes that means you have to add zeros to the dividend. So let's take a look at this. The first number goes inside the house, 0.0135 divided by 4.5. So I look at the outside. In this case, the outside is not a whole number. Okay? So I am going to move the decimal point one place to the right, which means I have to do the same thing in my answer. And it's going to go in my answer directly above where it is in my dividend. Okay, so I had to move one place to the right in the divisor, which means I moved it one place to the right in the dividend, and the decimal points line up perfectly in my quotient. So a lot of vocabulary there, but we're still going to use does McDonald's serve burgers to help us remember the steps. So, does 45 go into 0? No. But instead of putting a little X on the outside, well, I'll put an X here. 45 still doesn't go into 0. I need a 0 in front of the decimal point. You should never write 0.45. Okay, that's considered really bad mathematical grammar. You should always have a digit in front of the decimal and after the decimal. Okay, when I teach teenagers, I say no naked decimals. Gotta have clothes on the front and clothes on the back. And there's some interesting reasons behind that, but it's very bad math grammar to just leave nothing right there. Can I divide 45 into 1? No, I can't. And again, I'm going to need a place holding 0. Can 45 go into 13? The answer is no, it can't, so get another 0. Can 45 go into 135? Now that's interesting. let's see, 45 plus 45 is 90. And if I add another 45, yeah, so 1, 2, 3. 3 times 45 is 135. 135 minus 135 is 0, and there's nothing left to bring down. So my final answer here is 0.003. 1.45 divided by 0.08. So 1.45 in the house as the dividend divided by 0.08 is my divisor. Is the outside a whole number? No. So I'm going to have to move the decimal point all the way to the right. That happens to be 2 places. So I do the same thing to the dividend, and go ahead and put your answer up here in the quotient. Okay. Does McDonald's serve burgers? Divide. Does 8 go into 1? No. Does 8 go into 14? Yes. 1 time. 1 times 8 is 8. 14 minus 8 is 6. Bring down the 5. Does 8 go into 65? Yes. It goes in 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. 65 minus 64 is 1. And right now it doesn't look like I have anything to bring down. The reality is, I should put a 0 here. And I should bring down that 0. 8 goes into 10. 1 time. 1 times 8 is 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. And I need to add another 0 and bring it down. 8 goes into 20 2 times. 2 times 8 is 16. 20 minus 16 is 4. And I need to bring down yet another 0. When you're dividing by decimals, no remainders. So you keep dividing until there's either a pattern, like 0.3333333, or it terminates, which means it stops. 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. Oh, good. 40 minus 40 is 0. And we can stop because we have no remainder and there's nothing left to bring down. All right, for our next one. 0.1716 divided by 5.2. Again, I need to move the decimal point, in this case just 1 place. I try to write in this tiny space here. Not very good at it. Does McDonald's serve burgers? But our last problem took up a lot of room. So 52 does not go into 0, and 52 does not go into 1. So I'm going to put a 0 there to hold the place in front of the decimal point. 52 doesn't go into 17, so I need a 0 to hold that spot. But 52 will go into 171. Let's see, 52 plus 52 is 104, plus 52 is 156, plus 52 is 208. That's too big. But 1, 2, 3 times will work. 3 times 52 is 156. 171 minus 156 is 15. And I'm going to bring down the 6. Oh boy, I'm getting lucky with this problem. All right, my scratch work over here already tells me that 156 is 52 times 3. So So I'm able to finish this one up quickly because it terminates very quickly. We are not going to ask you to go more than 4 place values after the decimal point without it either terminating or repeating. It just gets to be too much. So, a summary for the notes on decimals. When adding and subtracting, line up the place values. With multiplication, we line up the last digit and put the decimal in the answer at the end. In division, you determine the place of the decimal first, because you have to divide by a whole number. All right, there's a lot of practice in your packet. There are some problems in the book, and there are some problems in IXL.